You know, there are mornings when you wake up, pour your coffee, look out over the land your grandfather broke his back to buy, and you think to yourself, this is it. This is peace. And then there are mornings like last Tuesday, where you walk out onto your porch and realize that peace hasn't just left the building. It's been run over by a 20-ton excavator and buried under a pile of unauthorized dirt. I knew homeowners associations could be bold. I've heard the horror stories about grass height and the wrong shade of beige paint. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the sight of a massive, raw, jagged trench sliced right through the middle of my south pasture like a scar on the face of the earth. We're talking fresh earth piled 6 feet high, broken fence posts snapping like toothpicks, and heavy machinery tracks churning up the soil I've spent 10 years rehabilitating. And right there, planted in the middle of this disaster zone like a flag on the moon, was a crooked piece of plywood with spray-painted letters reading, HOA Sewer Project, Do Not Touch. I genuinely thought it was a prank. I stood there, coffee mug frozen halfway to my mouth, waiting for a camera crew to jump out. But instead of a camera crew, out stepped a woman from behind a yellow dump truck. And let me tell you, you didn't need to see a badge to know she was the self-crowned queen of this little kingdom. She was wearing a hot pink blazer that assaulted the eyes, oversized sunglasses that cost more than my first car, and she was clutching a clipboard against her chest like it was the 10 Commandments. She saw me, pointed a manicured finger at the trench, and shouted across the pasture, "We're installing sewer lines through the ranch. It's for the community. You can't stop us." She looked so sure of herself, so confident that the world revolved around her schedule and her desires. Little did she know, I'm not just a rancher who likes his privacy. My name is Cal Vance, and for the last 6 years, I've served as a director within the Environmental Protection Agency. She hadn't just trespassed. She had just committed the environmental equivalent of kicking a grizzly bear in the teeth, and she was about to learn that federal jurisdiction hits a lot harder than an HOA bylaw. But before we get into the absolute destruction of her little empire, do me a favor, drop a comment below with where you're watching from and what time it is. I always like to see who's tuning in for the madness. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA that thought they were above the law, hit that subscribe button, because this is going to be therapeutic. I wish I could tell you this started with a misunderstanding. I wish I could say it was a clerical error, a map read upside down, a contractor who took a left instead of a right. But people like Brenda, that was her name, Brenda Higgins, don't make mistakes, they make declarations. I walked down the hill toward her, my boots sinking into the loose, ruined soil of my pasture. She didn't back up. She planted her heels, chin up, radiating that specific kind of entitlement that usually comes from never having been told no in 40 years. "We're expanding the infrastructure," she announced before I could even say hello. Her voice was sharp, dismissive. "These lines are part of the Whispering Pines sewer upgrade. The community voted unanimously last night. This route is approved." I stopped about 5 feet from her. I looked at the trench, then back at her. "Brenda," I said, keeping my voice low, the way you speak to a spooked horse. "This is private property. My property." She didn't even blink behind those sunglasses. "It's community property now." I actually laughed. It was involuntary. Since when? Since I decided it should be. That sentence right there. That is the moment the world tilted on its axis. Since I decided. It wasn't about law, or deeds, or rights. It was about her will. Behind her stood 2 other board members, a man wiping sweat off his bald head, and a woman nervously adjusting her glasses, both looking like they knew this was a bad idea, but were too terrified of Brenda to say a word. I looked past her to the workers. 3 guys in neon vests were down in the trench, looking uncomfortable. They weren't bad guys, just guys trying to earn a paycheck who had no idea they were currently committing a felony. "Morning, fellas," I called out. One of them started to stand up, but Brenda snapped her fingers. Actually snapped them. "Do not talk to him," she hissed. "He is trespassing on our construction site." I felt a vein in my forehead start to throb. "Brenda, let's be very clear. You are standing on the Double R Ranch. This is federal-adjacent land. You are the trespasser." She smiled, a tight, plastic expression that looked painful. "Not anymore. The HOA unanimously approved an emergency easement. It's binding." "By unanimous?" I asked, glancing at her 2 terrified lackeys. "Do you mean you and these 2 hostages?" The sweating man coughed. "Well, technically, the bylaws state. Yes, unanimous. Brenda stomped her foot, cutting him off. We don't have time for this debate. I crossed my arms. Show me the documents. What documents? The easement papers. I listed off, ticking them on my fingers. The county approval. The environmental review. The soil impact study. The federal wetlands survey. Show me the permits, Brenda. She waved her hand in the air like she was swatting away a gnat. We don't need all that red tape. The HOA has an internal approval process. It's much faster, much more efficient. That is not how the law works, Brenda. You can't just internal process a sewer line across private land. Well, it's how our community works, she said, lifting her chin. And since you're next door, you fall under our sphere of influence. Sphere of influence? It sounded like she was planning a geopolitical invasion, not a plumbing job. I crouched down by the edge of the trench. The pipe they were laying was massive, 3 feet across, concrete, industrial grade. But then I caught a whiff of something. A faint, sour, chemical smell wafting up from the older pipes they were connecting to. It smelled like rot. It smelled like trouble. I stood up and pulled out my phone. I started snapping photos. The machinery, the license plates on the trucks, the depth of the trench, the broken fence line, and finally, a nice high-resolution shot of Brenda's face. What do you think you're doing? She barked, stepping into my personal space. Documenting, I said. For what? You'll find out. She got right in my face, smelling like expensive perfume and desperation. Are you threatening me? No, I said calmly. I'm collecting evidence. Evidence of what? We are within our rights. Karen. Sorry, Brenda. You can't create your own rights. She scoffed. I am the president. I create what is necessary. I looked at the workers again. Hey guys, do you have a county permit number for this job? Anything I can run through the database? They froze. The foreman looked at Brenda, then at me. Ma'am, he said quietly. We were told the association owned this land. There it was. The lie. The foundation of sand this whole castle was built on. I pulled up the county GIS map on my phone. I tapped my parcel. It lit up bright green, my name, Calvin Vance, displayed in bold letters right across the screen. I turned the screen to the foreman. This is where you are standing. And that is my name. The workers went pale. Brenda lunged forward and slapped the phone out of my hand. It hit the dirt face down. For a second, nobody moved. The wind blew through the torn-up grass. That's fake, she snapped, though her hand was trembling slightly. County records are slow. My records are current. She pointed a finger at me. If you interfere again, I will call the police. I will have you arrested for trespassing on your own ranch for obstructing an HOA project. I picked up my phone, wiped the dust off the screen, and looked her dead in the eye. Brenda, you are digging a sewer trench across federally protected watershed land without a permit. You have absolutely no idea the hole you are digging for yourself. You can't intimidate me, she spat. I know my rights. And yours don't matter on HOA territory. HOA territory? I asked softly. Everything within 1 mile of our gate falls under our influence, she said. And she believed it. She truly believed it. I stepped back. I looked at the damage. The broken irrigation lines meant my alfalfa was going to die. The soil displacement meant erosion when the rains came. And that smell meant something was leaking. Brenda, this stops today, I said. No, she replied, a smirk curling her lip. It starts today. She turned her back to me. Keep digging. Ignore him. He's nobody. Nobody. I walked back to my truck. I didn't call the sheriff. The sheriff deals with noise complaints and theft. This was an environmental disaster in the making. I dialed a number I have saved in my favorites, a direct line to the Regional Enforcement Division of the EPA. Brenda didn't need to know yet. Let her dig. Let her pile up the evidence. Because she had just triggered a federal response that was going to make a meteor strike look subtle. If I thought the first day was bad, the next morning was a waking nightmare. I woke up before dawn to the sound of the ground shaking. I thought it was an earthquake until I looked out the window. She had doubled down. It wasn't just a trench anymore. It was a war zone. There were 2 more bulldozers, a concrete mixer, and a crew of at least 15 men tearing my property apart. She had put up a bright orange plastic fence on my land, with a sign zip-tied to it. Authorized personnel only. And there she was, standing in the middle of the chaos, wearing a neon vest 3 sizes too small and a plastic toy hard hat she must have bought at a party store. She was pointing, shouting, directing traffic like she was Patton in the desert. I walked out there, my blood boiling. They had ripped through my main irrigation line. Water was spraying into the air, flooding the lower pasture. "Stop!" I yelled. "Turn it off." A backhoe operator looked at me, confused. Brenda sprinted over, waving her clipboard. "Don't stop. Keep going. Ignore him." I climbed up onto the tracks of the backhoe and knocked on the glass. The operator rolled down the window. "Sir," he said, looking terrified. "We were told this is community property." "It's not," I snapped. "You are destroying private infrastructure." Brenda jammed herself between me and the machine. "Get off the equipment. You are violating site safety regulations." "You don't have safety regulations, Brenda. You have a coloring book and a God complex." "If you stop working," she screamed at the operator, "you are fired. I will replace your company by lunch." The operator swallowed hard and turned back to his controls. He was scared. She had him terrified for his livelihood. I jumped down and looked around. That smell was stronger now. Sour. Chemical. And then I saw it. Near the bottom of the new trench, a murky, brownish liquid was pooling, seeping out of the earth. It had an oily sheen to it. I walked over to it. "Brenda, where is this wastewater coming from?" She rolled her eyes. "We rerouted part of the old sewer flow temporarily. It's just water." "That is not water, Brenda." "It's fine," she said, waving a hand. "It's organic. It's fertilizer." I stared at her. "Did you just call raw sewage fertilizer?" "It's natural. It will evaporate. It will contaminate the groundwater. It will kill the livestock." "You have no idea how anything works," she screamed. "I have people for that." "You mean the people who lied to you about who owns this land?" She faltered for a split second, just a flicker of doubt, but then she walled it off. "This is happening whether you like it or not. The community deserves proper sewage handling, and your ranch is the path of least resistance." Just then, the excavator bucket swung around and smashed into something underground that wasn't on their map. Crack! A geyser of brown, foul sludge erupted from the earth. It sprayed across the trench, coating the expensive machinery, splashing the workers. The smell hit us like a physical blow. Workers gagged, stumbling back. "You ruptured the main," I shouted. "It's fine," Brenda shrieked, backing away, covering her nose. "It's just mud. That is human waste, Brenda. You have created a biohazard." The foreman ran over, wiping sludge off his face. "Ma'am, we have to stop. We need a containment team. This is a hazmat situation." "No," she yelled. "Keep digging. Cover it up. If you stop, I'll sue you for breach of contract." "We don't have a contract," the foreman yelled back. "I emailed you one. That counts." I stepped in. "Brenda, this project ends now." She laughed, a high, frantic sound. "You can't end it. You're nobody." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I already ended it. "My team is 5 minutes out." "The county?" she scoffed. "I own the county." "Not the county," I said. She squinted. "Who then?" "You'll see." And right on cue, the sound of tires on gravel cut through the noise of the machinery. We all turned. Rolling down the driveway was a convoy. 3 white Chevrolet Tahoes, government plates, light bars behind the grills. On the doors, the blue and green seal of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. They stopped in a line. The doors opened. 4 specialists stepped out. They weren't wearing suits. They were wearing navy blue field jackets, Tyvek boots, and respirators hanging around their necks. These were the field investigators. The people who clean up toxic spills and shut down illegal factories. Karen, Brenda, stared at them. She looked at me. Then she made the worst mistake of her life. She marched toward them. "Excuse me," she shouted. "This is a restricted HOA project. You cannot be here." The lead agent, a woman named Rivera who I've worked with for 5 years, paused. She looked at Brenda like she was a particularly interesting bug. "Ma'am," Rivera said, her voice calm and authoritative. "We received a report of a critical environmental hazard and unauthorized excavation on federal adjacent land. We are here to assess." "Hazard?" Brenda laughed. "This is community improvement. Get off my site." "Your site?" Rivera asked, glancing at the sewage bubbling out of the ground. "Yes. I told the rancher he has no authority here. HOA rules override everything within our boundaries." Rivera blinked. "Ma'am, that is not how the United States government works. I am calling the sheriff." Brenda screamed, reaching for her phone. Rivera flashed her badge. We outranked the sheriff on environmental violations, ma'am. Step aside. While Brenda stood there sputtering, unable to process the concept of someone having more power than her, the team went to work. They moved with surgical precision. One agent was already taking soil samples from the sludge. Another was filling vials with the contaminated water. A third was measuring the trench, shaking his head at the lack of shoring. Brenda ran after the guy taking samples. Stop touching that. That is HOA property. You didn't ask permission. The agent didn't even look up. Ma'am, the presence of untreated wastewater in open soil is a violation of the Clean Water Act. We are obligated to document it. I didn't give you permission. We don't need it. I couldn't resist. I walked up behind her. Brenda, show them the permit. She spun around. Shut up. Rivera stepped in. That's a good question. Ma'am, do you have a construction and wastewater routing permit? Brenda's mouth opened and closed. We voted internally. Rivera stared at her. You voted? Ma'am, you need a county permit, an environmental impact statement, and a wastewater handling authorization. Do you have any of those? We don't need them. We govern ourselves. Rivera exchanged a look with her team. The look said, we got a live one. She pulled out a yellow pad. Ma'am, at this time, we are issuing a federal cease and desist order on this location pending immediate review. She tore the slip off and handed it to Brenda. Brenda looked at the paper. Then she ripped it in half and threw the pieces in the mud. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the sewage seemed to stop bubbling. Ma'am, Rivera said, her voice dropping an octave. Destroying a federal order is a felony. The foreman, watching this, signaled his guys. Pack it up. We're leaving. Now, no one leaves. Brenda shrieked. You're fired if you leave. Lady, the foreman yelled back, climbing into his truck. We can't be fired from a job that's illegal. We're gone. Within 5 minutes, the site was abandoned. Just me, the EPA team, and Brenda, standing alone in the mud. She stormed over to me. This isn't over. I will take this to the board. I will have you charged with obstruction. You interfered with my sewer lines. Environmental interference isn't a thing, Brenda, I said. Rivera walked up to me. She didn't salute, but she nodded with the respect of a colleague. Director, she said quietly, we'll file the emergency report. This is extensive. Brenda heard her. Director? Director of what? His fan club. I smirked. Not yet, Rivera. Let her find out the hard way. Brenda pointed a shaking finger at me. You'll pay for this. I'm calling a meeting tonight, and you are going to be publicly shamed. She stomped off toward her car, leaving a trail of muddy footprints and broken laws behind her. I knew she wouldn't stop. I knew she'd try to spin this. So when I saw the cars gathering at the clubhouse down the road that evening, I put on a clean shirt, grabbed my badge, and drove over. The clubhouse was packed. Brenda was at the podium, microphone screeching. There he is, she shouted as I walked in. The man who attacked our community. He brought fake agents onto our land. He sabotaged the project. I walked to the front. The room was buzzing. People were angry, confused. You sabotaged us, she yelled. You endangered the workers. I didn't realize pumping untreated sewage into a ranch counted as development, I said, my voice carrying to the back of the room. Gasps. Sewage? Someone whispered. It was clean water. Brenda lied. It was brown and smelled like death. Brenda, I said. Lies. He's a nobody. He's an unemployed rancher who hates progress. I sighed. Okay, let's do this. I reached into my jacket. I pulled out the leather wallet. I flipped it open. The gold badge caught the overhead lights. United States Environmental Protection Agency, Director. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. No. Brenda laughed, a frantic, high-pitched cackle. No, that's fake. You bought that on Etsy. I held it out. Her board members leaned in. They saw the seal. They saw the ID number. They recoiled. Karen, the board treasurer whispered. That's real. It's not, she screamed. Brenda, I said, my voice calm but filling the room. The EPA reports to Congress. My signature is on the regulations you violated today. You excavated without a permit. You dumped hazardous waste. You rerouted a biohazard into a waterway. And you attempted to block a federal investigation. You set me up, she shrieked. You tricked me. You tricked yourself when you decided the law didn't apply to you. The room turned on her. Fast. She's going to bankrupt us, someone yelled. We're going to prison, another woman cried. I moved to remove Brenda as president immediately, a man in the back shouted. Seconded. Thirded. You can't remove me. I am the HOA. Brenda screamed, clinging to the podium like it was a life raft. All in favor? I asked the room. Every hand went up. Get out, the treasurer said. Two guys grabbed her arms and escorted her out. She was kicking, screaming about conspiracies and witch hunts. The next day, the real hammer dropped. The heavy hitters arrived. Soil specialists, hydrologists, environmental lawyers. We found industrial residue in the soil. Turns out Brenda had been letting the clubhouse dump grease trap waste into the residential lines for years. Illegal. Dangerous. But the cherry on top? The poetic justice that you couldn't write if you tried? My hydrologist came to me around 2 p.m. with a tablet. Sir, we found the source of the secondary leak. The big one. Where? 142, Birch Hollow Lane. I froze. Whose address is that? Brenda Higgins. I laughed until my ribs hurt. Her own septic system had failed because she never maintained it, and it was leaking directly into the illegal trench she had dug. She had literally trenched her own sewage into the open. We went to her house. She wouldn't open the door. We had to threaten a warrant. When we finally got into the backyard, the ground was saturated. It was a swamp of her own making. Rivera looked at her, standing there in her bathrobe, defeated. Ma'am, you are personally responsible for this remediation, not the HOA. You. The soil decontamination alone will run into the six figures. Brenda collapsed on her lawn, just sat down in the grass and stared at nothing. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing this? Because you dug a sewer through my ranch, Brenda, I said. Because you lied. Because you thought you were above the consequences. In the end, she sold the house to pay the fines. She moved out of state. The HOA dissolved and reformed with a board that actually reads the laws. My ranch is healing. The soil is being treated. But every time I look out at that pasture, I remember the look on her face when she saw the badge. It's a reminder that no matter how loud you yell, no matter how shiny your blazer is, you cannot outrun the truth. And you definitely shouldn't try to outrun the EPA. So, folks, learn from Brenda. Check your permits. Respect your neighbors. And for the love of all that is holy, don't dig a trench unless you know what's buried in your own backyard. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay legal, and I'll see you in the next one.